All right, let's take a trip back in time. But we're not heading to some lab full of old-school vacuum tubes or silicon chips. Nope, we're going to a textile mill in 19th century France. And believe it or not, that's where we're going to find a really surprising ancestor of the modern computer. So get this. What if I told you that one of the very first, most complicated examples of a stored program had absolutely nothing to do with calculating numbers or, breaking some secret code?
Yeah, that program wasn't for math. It was for weaving. This. And no, that's not a painting. It's a portrait of a man named Joseph Marie Jacquard, and it is woven 100% out of silk thread. You can almost think of it like a 19th century JPEG file. Pretty wild, right?
This amazing piece of work was made by something called the Jacquard machine, which was patented way back in 1804. Now this thing was a total game changer for weaving, for sure. But, as we're about to find out, it was also, believe it or not, a direct mechanical ancestor to our digital age.
Okay, so to really get how brilliant this invention was, you first have to understand the massive problem it solved. We need to look at what it was like to weave these crazy complex patterns before this machine came along.
So before Jacquard's automation, if you wanted to make these fancy, detailed patterns on what they called a draw loom, you needed a human assistant. And this assistant, usually a young boy called a draw boy, was basically the living, breathing human processor for the whole operation.
So what did this human computer actually do? Well, the master weaver would be down below, shouting out instructions. And the drawboy, who was literally sitting on top of this giant loom, had to manually pull hundreds of specific cords in the exact right order. And get this, he had to do it for every single row of thread. Can you imagine? It was incredibly slow, exhausting work. And if he made just one tiny mistake, the whole pattern could be ruined.
This is where Jacquard's genius comes in. His solution? Replace this super slow, error-prone human process with a machine that could read instructions. I mean, simply put, he replaced the drawboy with a program.
And the heart of his new system was the punched card. It's that simple. Each one of these cards was like a single line of code. And when you laced a whole bunch of them together into a long chain, you had the complete program to weave an entire complex design.
And how it worked is just pure binary logic. It's brilliant. See, for every thread, there's a little needle. If the card has a hole in a certain spot, the needle goes right through, a hook grabs on, and the thread gets lifted up. But if there's no hole, the card blocks the needle, the hook gets pushed out of the way, and the thread stays down. Hole or no hole, lift or don't lift. It's a physical 1 or 0, literally.
So this incredibly simple but powerful binary system, it did way more than just change the textile industry forever. It planted a seed, an idea, that would eventually grow into the entire field of modern computing. This is the bridge, right here, from fabric to Fortran, from looms to laptops.
Now, to be fair, Jacquard's machine didn't just appear out of thin air. He was definitely building on some earlier ideas from other inventors, guys like Bouchon and Falcon. But Jacquard was the one who perfected the system and made it a massive commercial hit. And that's key, because a few decades later, an English mathematician, you might have heard of him, Charles Babbage, he saw this invention and had a huge light bulb moment.
And this, right here, is the direct link. This is the aha moment. Babbage, the guy we often call the father of the computer, he actually owned one of these woven silk portraits. He looked at it, understood how a chain of cards could tell a machine how to create this incredibly complex pattern, and he realized he could use that exact same idea to feed instructions into his analytical engine, which was basically the world's first blueprint for a general-purpose computer.
So you see, this thing was so much more than just a machine for making fancy cloth. It was a physical, working example of ideas that are now completely fundamental to everything we do with computers.
And the scale of it, it's just mind-boggling. To weave that one single portrait of the inventor, Joseph Jacquard himself, the loom had to process a program made of, wait for it, 24,000 individual punched cards, all of them strung together in one massive continuous loop. Wow.
Just stop and think about what that actually represents. You've got a stored program, you've got automation of a really complex, creative task, you've got a binary system, ones and zeros, you even have a kind of read-only memory, like ROM. All these huge concepts from computer science, they were all right there, physically working in a French textile mill more than 200 years ago. So, the journey from a loom that weaves silk to the smartphone in your pocket, it really all started with a super simple idea, using holes in paper to store instructions. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What simple tool that we use every day,
something we barely even think about, might hold the key, the fundamental code for tomorrow's next big revolution?